Today I wanted to film my May TBR, which is not going to be very big just because I know I'm not a fast reader, so I know it's not going to be like a lot of books. Most of them are probably going to be manga or graphic novels, just because I found that those are like one of the very few ways where I can really just, just fill up my reading goal for this year completely without kind of like taking breaks from books that are a very big commitment to me. I actually updated my reading goal from 15 to 30 just because I already reached my goal last month and I'm now at 17 books out of 15, so I put it up to 30, which is the amount of books I read last year. I didn't think I was going to be able to read that much this year just because last year was like from November and like throughout November and December I kind of had like a heavy reading slump, and then obviously reading 9,000 in January didn't really help much. The first books I want to read this month are actually manga. There are volumes 7, 8, and 9 of Moriarty the Patriot. I already talked about this manga a lot. I'm trying to finish them all of the ones that I own so far, just because I've already finished the first season of the anime. The second season, I don't know when it's gonna come out. I hope it's gonna come out, just because I need more of this show. But in the meantime that it's not out yet, I'm going to fill myself up with these manga. Interesting wording, Chloe. Anyway, so if you don't know what Moriarty the Patriot is about, just imagine Death Note mixed with Black Buffalo along with the original Sherlock Holmes stories, and you got Moriarty the Patriot, where we follow the main villain of the original Sherlock Holmes stories, Moriarty, where in this he's not really like a villain, like he tries to make himself a villain in this world, whereas he's really just an anti-hero who's trying to make the world a better place. Well, by the world I mean London. And you kind of follow him and his associates, and you also follow Sherlock and Watson. Like I said, I've already finished the anime, like the first season, so I know how the first part of it is going to end. That doesn't matter though, because I'm having a lot of fun reading the series. Also, a couple of chapters or like scenes from the manga aren't in the anime, so it's not like exactly the exact same as the manga, which is really fun. It doesn't feel like I'm rereading or rewatching the same thing over and over again, even though I have watched Moriarty the Patriot 20 times now. But we're not going to talk about that. I'm trying to read 3 of these a month, just because I know that's like the amount of manga I can fit in along with the other books I'm planning on reading. So we'll see, maybe I read one more, but this is like just the TBR of it. Next book I really want to read in May is Dark Tide by Jennifer Donnelly. This is the 3rd book in the Waterfire Saga, which I've talked about a couple of times on my channel already. This is a reread. I've been rereading the series for the past 3 years now. Just because I already said this a couple of times as well, but I'm the kind of person where I start a series, I read the first book, then I want to take a break from that series, and I start another, then another, then another, then I end up circling back around to reading the sequel a year later. I reread Deep Blue, which is the first book, 2 years ago. Then last year I reread Rogue Wave, which is a sequel, and this year I am going to try to read Dark Tide and Sea Spell, which is the 4th and final book. I don't know if I will read Sea Spell this month as well, maybe next month, but because I associate May with mermaids, just because of an art challenge which is called Mermaid, where you kind of like have daily prompts to draw a mermaid every day for the month of May, and I kind of always associate May with mermaid, so that's why I always read these books in May. But yeah, I'm gonna try and read both of these, if not this month, at least this year. If you don't know what the Waterfire Saga is about, it's pitched as Percy Jackson but with mermaids, and it's very much like feminist, like mermaids, with a lot of world building. There's like war, there's a monster they have to destroy, there's a quest and everything, and it's really fun. It is the first series that I ever really read. It's the first whole series that I read, and I always say that this is the series that got me into reading, just because it's really the one that I was like, oh, I like this a lot, I'm gonna keep going. It has a couple of twists. If I remember correctly, they were predictable, but that might be I only thought they were predictable just because I read it before. But there were a couple of twists I had forgot about and were actually pretty effective. I remember this author saying that she wrote this book, the series, for her 10-year-old daughter, I think, at the time. Which, if she wrote this for a 10-year-old, and these are supposed to be middle grade, then holy crap! These kind of read like middle grades, but what's happening in the stories and also the ages of the characters are very much YA, just because it's very bloody and very violent. So to call this a middle grade, oh wow. Like, I read this when I was like 15, 16, something like that. I really enjoyed it, but even I was kind of like, oof. It was very violent, just because there's a lot of war, there's death, there's blood, there's people getting shot with harpoons, and, you know, very vivid description of the wounds and the harpoon through someone's neck. I think a harpoon piercing someone's body parts is what I mean. And it described very vividly and very graphically. So calling this middle grade kind of feels like calling Sarah J Maas's books YA. It feels wrong just because it is. Because the characters aren't middle grade, they are very much YA. Because I think the main character is like 16 or something, and the other characters are also around that age, so it's very much YA. Sometimes it reads very much like middle grade just because there's the power of friendship. So yeah, but I talk about this book and I like this series a lot. Now obviously rereading them, having read all the other books, I feel like this, if I would have read this series now instead of when I read it the first time, I wouldn't have loved it as much. I think I reread these books and like the main thing that I love is just like the nostalgia that I have with them. I always recommend this series for like people who want to get into YA fantasy, because it's very easy to read. The world building, like there's a lot of world building, but it's not like you have to retain every information to be able to understand the story. Like, no, they tell you stuff, you're like, oh, okay, you understand it, and we move on. Sometimes you don't really see those things again, but you know, there is a lot of world building and a lot of it is very fun because it's a lot of like mermaid lore, and I think this is one of the only books that I've read with mermaids. Yes, I think this is the only series I've read with mermaids, and I really liked it, so maybe I should do that more. Something to write down. Oh wow, I'm gonna have to buy more books just because now I want to read mermaid books. Oh my god. So yeah, I always talk about these books, like saying if you want to get into YA fantasy, or like you want to read something a little easy to read for like YA, but you want high fantasy and world building, this one's the way to go. Ignore the annoying characters. The world is really fun. It's definitely, like, I think that's the reason why I got into reading through this series, because the world building in it and like the political intrigue, like the mermaid political intrigue in this is really good. And that's also why I, like, at the beginning I thought that I liked this book because it was fantasy, and I thought every fantasy book, like anything that was labeled fantasy, whether it was middle grade, YA or adult, it was gonna be like this. I was wrong. So I bought a bunch of books that I ended up not liking just because they were high fantasy, but without the world building, like this much real world building, and without this much like political intrigue. So I was kind of like bored with it. But then I realized it was political intrigue, and now I read a lot more books that I really want to read. The next books I want to try and read this month are Finale and Legendary by Stephanie Garber, which are the two sequels to Caraval, which I read last month. I already started reading Legendary, as you can see. There's already a plot twist in this. I'm tired. I think I don't really need to explain what Caraval is, just because I feel like it's one of those popular books that everyone has read so far, if you're not like me. I've always seen these books around on Instagram, YouTube, and also Book Talk, and so I kind of got the gist of like what it was gonna be about, but I never like reached for it. I don't know why. And then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart, and then I found out it's a sequel series to Caraval, and then I was like, okay, then maybe I should read Caraval. But then I remembered, oh, I read Six of Crows before reading Shadow and Bone, and a bunch of people didn't like Shadow and Bone. They said Six of Crows was better, so I didn't really want to read Shadow and Bone. Now, obviously, with the show coming that came out, it kind of made me want to read Shadow and Bone, but just every time I consider it, I always see people kind of saying how Mal and Elena were annoying. Like, the friends to lovers trope is not really my thing. So I don't think I would have loved Shadow and Bone as much. Maybe if I read it when it first came out, just like everybody else, I might have liked it, but I don't think I'm gonna read it now. But with this, it was different, just because I have heard that Caraval is different from Once Upon a Broken Heart. At least that's what I've always heard. But reading it myself, it's not that different. Like, the writing is a little bit different, just because obviously the characters are different. I'm pretty sure that Stephanie Garber writes, like, has a writing style that is very, like, poetic and, like, describes things very beautifully, to the point where sometimes it nearly made me cry the way she describes the mundane things. It's very much the opposite to House of Hollow, just because they're the most mundane things you can describe are described very gruesomely and graphically and disgustingly, to where you think, like, why would you write this like that? And with Stephanie Garber, it's the opposite. The most mundane things are described as very, like, poetic and beautiful and la 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 la, to the point where it brought tears to my eyes. And, like, I had the same feeling while reading Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After, so I don't think her writing is very different. I think it's the way that she writes her characters has been different, just because so far I only read Caraval, but, like, Scarlet and Evangeline are very different characters. And also just because Caraval specifically, the main character has synesthesia, which, if you don't know, it's where a person can taste colors or, like, hear colors or, like, taste shapes. I have synesthesia, and it's very similar to Scarlet from Caraval. The way that her synesthesia is written is very similar to mine, which made me cry. If you haven't watched my wrap-up video, you're going to watch me cry while talking about it. That's also one of the reasons why I think people, you know, say that the writing is different, just because the characters are different, and also just because the addition of Scarlet's synesthesia is different from the way that she's going to describe feelings and just what's happening, just because she describes it with colors and, you know, things that are associated with those colors, which I thought were really fun, just because I've never read, you know, a character having synesthesia. So yeah, that's, like I said this in my wrap-up video, I never thought that a character having synesthesia was the representation I needed. I don't know why that is, but every time she described something with a color, or like she described, like her synesthesia was acting up, I was like, why is that me? And also because a lot of the colors she associated with feelings or like situations or like scenery were the same things that were the same colors that I see, with the addition to certain shapes, and like I was just like, but like it was very similar to mine, and it had me crying. So I'm very excited for the two other books. I know that I don't think Finale has Scarlet's POV. I don't think it does. It has both of them. It has no. It's gonna be both of that POV in Finale. Fuck yeah. I'm so excited to read more about Scarlet's synesthesia, just because I need more of this. That's also why I said in my wrap-up video that Stephanie Garber is now one of my favorite authors, just because she nailed the synesthesia. I don't know if she herself has synesthesia. I adore it so much, and this just adds to what I love about Stephanie Garber so much, and I will never stop talking about her. I will never stop talking about her books. And yes. These are all of the books that I hope to read in May. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull them off, all of them, just because I feel like once I finish Caraval, like all 3 books, I'm going to be very much in a reading slump, just because I know I'm going to want more. So I'm not looking forward to that, but I am looking forward to like reading more about this world and just finding out more about this world, and I'm just very excited, and I hope I'm gonna be able to get through all of them. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe. I will link down below my Etsy shop, where I sell stickers, bookmarks, and prints of my own fan art and my own art, and also the stickers and bookmarks are like book based, like book fandom based. I will also link down below my Instagram, which is where I post the most, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.